Cameron Wolfe. You see him on NFL Network as one of their national reporters. He is based often in Miami with the Dolphins, and that's where he was today covering the joint practice between Miami and Washington. Cameron, thanks for the time. You're on in D.C. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing great, buddy.
Doing very well. Thanks for a few minutes. Let's just start with what you saw from Jayden Daniels. I always like when the reporters in other markets in these joint sessions get to see him for the first time. What'd you think?
Yeah, I thought he looked really good today. I actually have known Jayden a little bit. I was in LSU for his pro day and interviewed him for NFL Network there. And so I've been kind of following his journey from a distance, but I haven't got to go to Washington through my kind of camp tours this year. And so it was, I live here in Miami, and I got to see joint practices here. And most of my eyes today were on Jayden. And I saw a guy that looked comfortable. He looked in control. You got a Dolphins team that threw a lot of blitzes at him, and he wasn't perfect on all the plays, but he definitely didn't look like a rookie swimming underwater like I think a lot of rookies do. And so I came away impressed. I thought that the Commanders had their franchise quarterback when they drafted him, and today just kind of reaffirmed that belief. He had a really good preseason start last week, and I think he's building upon that. And so, the offense is very much a lot of 3 and 5 step drops, I think, to take care of their tackles. But I think that's a good way to get your quarterback comfortable. And everything I've seen from Jayden Daniels makes me think he's going to have some early success.
Cameron, what does he have now that kind of no matter what, if all the chips are down, things are bad, he can sort of rely on, fall back on? And what do you think he needs to work on at this stage in order to get where maybe he wants to go?
Yeah, I think he's probably going to have to work on what do you do when chaos happens, right? Because it's going to happen. They obviously don't have an A-plus offensive line, and there's going to be a lot of blitzes sent his way. And so how does he respond to the pressure? How does he respond when the first read isn't there? And so I think that's something we won't see until the regular season. From what I understand, he's going to play maybe 1 to 2 drives this week. And so you're not going to see him in a full function of a game. But what happens when you're game planning for him and sending blitzes his way? Does he completely rely on his legs, or is there ways he can use his arms and his quick ability to process to beat defenses? That's something he's going to be challenged at early.
Cameron, as far as the play time and the length of the time on the field for guys this weekend, how much of a test is Washington actually going to get? Are the Dolphin starters going to go?
Yeah, I think you'll see the Dolphin starters, some of them go for a little bit. Now, they've had some injuries, and so you won't see the full version of them. Jalen Waddle, Jalen Ramsey, Odell Beckham, Javon Holland, those are some guys who won't play this week. They all kind of have minor injuries that they're dealing with. But I do imagine that you'll see some of their starters. They didn't play them at all last week. I think you'll see maybe 1 or 2 drives for those guys getting their feet wet, probably similar to what you see from Washington starters as well.
NFL Network's Cameron Wolfe with us here on Grant and Danny. So you mentioned just, obviously with Miami, right? I think Mike McDaniel did such a good job of figuring out and catering things to what Tua does well down there, right? Just in terms of getting the speed, the yards
absolutely.
after the catch, finding him some, clean throwing lanes, trying to keep his feet clean, et cetera. What sort of things are applicable maybe for Washington and Cliff Kingsbury and company to do like that for Jayden Daniels to give him some success to hit the ground running?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the money. I think that, there's a stat called time to throw that I think is my favorite stat for young quarterbacks. And Tua Tagovailoa leads the NFL in time to throw. It's essentially how quickly you get the ball from the snap to out of your hands. And so, I think there used to be a negative notion of like the check down guys, the guys who throw it to the backs or to the slot receiver so quickly. But I think in this new NFL where speed and getting the ball in space is such a key, I think that's actually a positive. Like if you can make your reads very quickly, then I think that helps you maximize your playmakers and also prevents you from getting hurt. One of the reasons why Tua played all his games last year was not because they improved their offensive line dramatically. It was because he got the ball out even quicker, and he was in a position where he could protect himself just by getting rid of the ball. And so I think for Jayden, obviously he has his legs, and that's going to be a part of his game. But I think the real focus is, hey, we don't need to go to our 4th read on most plays. Most reads, your first and second read is going to be good enough, and you can have success, and if not, then get rid of the ball or make a scramble.
Cameron Wolfe is with us, NFL Network reporter who's in Miami covering the Dolphins and the Commanders this week at joint practices. He'll be at the game presumably on Saturday night as well. What did you make of Dan Quinn suggesting that outside of Terry McLaurin, there's still a lot TBD for Washington at wide receiver, including who their other starter is?
Yeah, I thought it was very transparent, and I appreciate it. I think that it's a very much in a kind of a real life look into where Jahan Dotson is. He's a guy who was a first round pick a couple of years ago. I think the anticipation was that he was going to be a kind of a duo with Terry McLaurin, and it just has not happened. You know, he had a little bit of upside his first year, and injuries happen, and this camp has been rough. You know, he's had some drops, he's had some kind of slow moments, and I think he talked today to the media and said, you know, confidence has been something he's been working on his end. And I actually got a chance to talk to Dan Quinn after practice, and I asked him about that receiver spot. And the first name he mentioned to me was Olamide Zaccheaus. And, you know, no offense to Olamide Zaccheaus, but if he's your number 2 receiver, then I think there's definitely some work to be done in that room. And I think it says a lot about the guy who was supposed to be that guy. And so I think that's a position that they're still looking for. They're looking for someone to step up. And if it's not one of the guys in that room, I could certainly see them looking in the market to go get a number 2 receiver before the season starts.
Who is Jahan Dotson as a receiver? I sort of had this wrong. I've been all over the pendulum here or the spectrum rather on this camera. And when he came out, I said, wait, there's more to this than meets the eye, not just a slot guy. I think he was hampered at Penn State by bad quarterback play. His year one kind of validated that. Last year was disappointing for everybody. Now he's kind of working more in the slot. I don't know exactly what he is or where he fits. Like if all goes well, if Dotson reaches his ceiling, what is he to you?
Yeah, I think he's a nice complimentary number 2 or number 3 receiver. I think that's all they're asking him to be. I don't think you need the guy to be 1,000+ yard receiver. I think you need a guy who can play in the slot. If you need to, can play outside. But I don't think the expectations of a first round pick should no longer be the burden upon him. I think you just want a guy that can be a steady starter and contributor to the offense. And right now, he's not that. He hasn't shown to be that at this level. And so I think if you lower expectations, but also hopefully rise his confidence, then maybe you get you a player who gets you 700-800 yards as a complimentary guy for Terry McLaurin. I think they would take that this year.
Cameron, obviously covering the practice today for NFL Network, you mentioned getting to talk to Dan Quinn, but I'd imagine it's some other combos as well. They took good care of you. Who did you catch up with, and what did you learn about Washington?
Yeah, I caught up with Jayden Daniels as well. And like I said, I've known Jayden a little bit, and I really just wanted to get some insight for him of just kind of what this journey has been like. A lot of times as a rookie quarterback, you're swimming, going from, you know, pro day to combine to pro day to draft to on the field, and you never really have a chance to breathe. But Jayden, man, he's cool and collected. He's got that Cali cool vibe about him that, you know, whether if something bothers him, you can't tell, you know, and I thought it was really cool. I had a conversation with him about the blitz packages for Miami because they sent like 4 or 5 different blitzes at him, and he giggled and he was like, man, I was waiting for it. I thought I was ready. And he's like, they got me on some and I got them on some. But he's like, I needed that. He's like, I needed that, the looks to be able to figure out how I adjust, how I do things in real speed. And he also just talked about his biggest surprise has just been kind of the speed of the defensive alignment. He said a lot of times you think about, you know, the receivers and everything, but he's like, the defensive linemen close so quickly. And so that's really forced me to speed up my processing. And so we talked a little bit about that and his journey. I think that he's really connecting with Cliff Kingsbury. He kind of shared a little bit of perspective with me about how Kingsbury's adjusted the offense to fit his skill set a lot more. And he can't wait for Tampa. He said like 3 or 4 times in our conversation, man, I'm counting down the days to Tampa. And he kept saying, man, I want to play more. I want to play more. He was saying he wanted to play more last preseason game, but you know, Dan Quinn's got him on a certain amount of snaps. And so he's eager and ready to go. He also joked with me that he and his LSU guys will compare stats all throughout the year. And that's going to be a competition between them. And Rashad White's another one of his guys there in Tampa, and they have a little competition for that first game against the Bucs as well.
So you mentioned Tampa week 1. Todd Bowles loves to blitz everything. I imagine a rookie quarterback he'll be licking his chops. How do you think, you know, the team will prepare for that, and Jayden Daniels by extension, you know, sort of counteract some of those things, because that's kind of the design here, right? Is Bowles trying to make you uncomfortable?
Absolutely. I think that's why when I mentioned Jayden saying he encouraged those blitzes, that's why I think this practice session was so good, because a lot of times in preseason, your game plans are vanilla. You don't even see blitzes in the game. And so the joint practices may be more of a blitz look for Jayden than he actually gets in the preseason game on Saturday. And so they're not Todd Bowles blitzes. Like no one blitzes like Todd Bowles. And so it's not like Miami simulating that. But the big thing is, how do you react when something catches you by surprise? And I'm sure there's going to be some blitzes that Todd sends week one that catch Jayden by surprise. But the more reps he can see against them, the more he can learn, okay, how quickly do I got to get the ball to my hot? Can I get to my second read on the look, or do I have to immediately go to the check down when I see the blitz? How quickly do I run? Who is my go-to receiver when all else fails? If Terry is double teamed, where do I go? Like all these questions that I think are easy to go through on a whiteboard when you're in the film room are a little bit more complex when you're on the field. And so I think he got a little bit of it today, but it'll be nothing like week one when Todd's bringing those blitzes.